I've been building side projects like everyone for years. 95% of them were just domains I got and never used. Another 4% materialized into locally running code I was happy to share snapshots of, but the last 1% are the difference makers. These are projects going to production. But when it comes to actually deploying them, well, that's always been a hit and miss. Back in the day, I was using Heroku, then along came Fly with tons of external integrations, and with the rise of AI platforms and the ease of sending a project to Vercel, that became a huge one. But these all have one major flaw. If, or more precisely, when you scale, things become expensive, very expensive. Now, you can solve this by going full-on DevOps mode, deploying your own Kubernetes, Docker Swarm, or even Kamal, which I have videos covering each in the description. But going down that road is not for the faint of heart. We all like smooth, easy, secure processes that in a few clicks send your app to production. What if I told you there's a better option, a free option, and one that comes with CI, monitoring, the ability to add databases and cache instances and other services. Oh yeah, and it's completely open source. Use your own remote server, your laptop or your home lab server. So today, I want to show you something cool. I want to show you Coolify. Check this out. So Coolify is an alternative to Vercel, but you already know that. Much like other platforms, it runs on any application of any language on any server. Fits too many use cases to count, comes with a push to deploy process, which is a nice way to brand CI/CD. This alone may be enough selling points to most, but Coolify has more. Yes, it's open source, which is surprising if you think about it. So many great companies invest so much in making DevOps go away and having the smoothest deployment process just to lock you in. And here's an open source on GitHub, 40,000 plus stars doing exactly the same for free. Okay, what's the catch? Honestly, there isn't one. The model is rather straightforward. Coolify does make your life easier, or at least free from DevOps. Why the air quotes? Well, you still have to deploy Coolify, so there's that. The developer behind it will offer it as a service for a monthly subscription he claims would be less than most cloud VMs. I think that claim is partially true, mainly because you still have to bring 1 or 2 servers of your own anyway. I have a box at home that I'm using for this, so other than powering it on, the hosting is pretty much free. Tired of AI hype tools that just talk a good game? Need a companion that builds anything, not just a pretty landing page? This is Deep Agent by Abacus AI, the god tier agent. Check it out at deepagentabacus.ai. Deep Agent one-shots a complete website, database included, from a single prompt. But that's easy. Watch it build a game of life. Again, one prompt. The efficiency is quite remarkable. Doing research, need to present? Deep Agent excels at rich data analysis, creating interactive dashboards, or generating thorough technical reports like this one on EVs packed with charts. Deep Agent Pro also connects to Google Workspace, automates Slack and Gmail, sets custom domains, hosts your apps, and performs agentic tasks that require browsing. It can literally do anything. As an engineer who values repeatable systems, I've tested Deep Agent and I'm genuinely impressed. This is the power of Deep Agent Pro. Sign up today. It's part of ChatLLM Teams, starting at $10 a month for the basic. Upgrade to Pro for just $10 more. Visit deepagent.abacus.ai. The link is also in the description. Get on this. Now, back to the video. I, however, am going to walk you through using a remote AWS box, which would be more practical to show. So a T3 Small, which we'll be using, comes with a 2 GB RAM and 2 virtual CPUs and ends up being a little under $15. Just remember, this is an hourly on-demand rate. Committing for a year can cut the price in about 30 to 50%. Coolify's main server requires at least 30 GB disk space. That's the recommended capacity, so I'll top it up and add it to the VPS. But if you're optimizing for cost, here's another vendor. Hello Hostinger, here's a free ad with slightly better pricing, 4 times the memory and 100 GB of NVMe on the house, so an overall better deal. Back to our AWS box, which is already standing. Please close your eyes while I quickly open public port ranges rather than sending traffic through a load balancer that protects the backend and terminates SSL. Coolify requires port 8000 and 6001 to 6002, but please don't just open them like that unless you're testing it. Okay, it's setup time, and it's going to be over very quickly.
That's what she said.
Michael, please. Please.
Sorry about that. We're in the box. Run the one-liner and let the installer do its thing. While it's running, this is a quick reminder that Coolify suggests a minimum of 2 CPU cores and 2 GB of memory, and yes, 30 GB of storage. There are slightly more resources required from the servers that are actually going to host the projects, requiring 8 GB of memory, 4 vCPUs, and 150 GB of disk space. If it wasn't clear, Coolify suggests that the main server holds the platform alone, and additional satellite, more performance servers serve as hosts which Coolify will use to run your applications. Hooking additional boxes is super easy and you don't have to add them, at least not when you start out or just run it for testing, as we'll soon see, but it's definitely something you want to plan for. Lastly, before diving into the running system, it's important to stress what Coolify is not. The docs state that perfectly. It's not a cloud service, you need to run your own server, but it can be anywhere. It's not a zero effort either, but in my opinion, it's pretty damn close. Time to hit the new server with port 8000, and there's our first Coolify screen asking for a new admin user account. Like I mentioned, you can use localhost to start with applications alongside the main server or hook a remote one. All you need to do that is to provide a private SSH key for the main server to use on its worker. Here's our dashboard, and it can be overwhelming, so instead of going through it, let's just cut through and create something. Starting from a new project, I have a real Telegram bot in production that I'm going to try and run the staging environment of right here. If everything goes smooth, I'll consider porting my production to Coolify. The first thing we're going to do is add a resource. I'm starting with easy mode, building my project as a Dockerfile based container, and I'll hit continue. Just to be clear on what's happening here, I made Coolify aware of a project I have on GitHub and the fact that it's built as a container. The system will pick that up, pull the code, build, push, and publish without me having to do anything. If you've ever struggled with deployments, I'm sure this makes you curious. Naturally, every project requires environment variables, which I'll also add. And since I'm using SQLite stored on disk, I'm expecting some persistency with my precious data. It's going to get a dedicated persistent volume on /data. Under the hood, this is done using Docker volume that persists the data between deployments. That's it, we let things run now. While it's running, and since we already discussed storage, Coolify can add, among many other options, an S3 or S3 compatible block storage. You provide the AWS credentials and it'll manage and store objects for you on AWS S3. And S3 doesn't have to be on AWS specifically. There is a similar compatible service, or a list of them rather, from many other providers that Coolify works with. Back to our project, which now have a green indication of success. And this takes us directly to the commit push to production if I hit it, similar to GitHub Actions. If we open the logs tab, the bot seems to be authorized and running with my staging API key. That's great. So the bot is up. I'll even hit it on Telegram to make sure it responds, which it does. But it's not aware of my user ID, and that's natural because it's a fresh installation. So for the sake of demonstration, let's say I need to manually insert a new user to the database. We're going to need access, right? The terminal tab lets you do exactly that, and easy access to the running application process with an attached shell. Once that's sorted, I can use the bot. But when I hit the admin panel, nothing happens. Going back to the logs show that the bot cannot find Redis. It's using a cache instance to support the admin panel interactions and create the menu structure, but it can't find one. So Coolify to the rescue. Let's add a cache instance. When adding a resource, you can pick any major database or service you can think of, and some you probably can't, like a Bitcoin node or nphysical for secrets management, Olama to run your LLMs, and yes, Redis. Picking Redis opens a bunch of available configurations from credentials through port mapping and SSL, but we're keeping it simple. Let's hit start, and just like that, Redis is up. All that's left is to pick the URL and have the bot use that. So let's go to the first app resource, environment variables, and update Redis address to that URL. Hitting restart will deploy a new version to Coolify with the updated variable. Moment of truth. Let's hit the bot's admin panel, and yes, we have a Redis-based admin menu ready to work. We can navigate through the options and check the logs that indicate no Redis failures.
A great success!
If you ever need to debug your production or staging remote Redis, and if you work with one, there's no chance you can skip this. Using the terminal, we can actually point the Redis CLI to use the Coolify Redis endpoint and read the keys. Okay, so everything's up, the application is served, Redis is operatable, but some of you are probably asking yourself, what about an actual CI, like push to deploy CI? Well, easy. Head over to Coolify's webhooks tab. Here, you can find a deploy webhook that can be used externally from any platform. I personally prefer to use a GitHub action, and Coolify has an easy-to-follow example in the docs. But webhooks are also great for notifying an external service that something had happened, like reporting a failed deployment to Telegram or Discord or Slack. It can also report status changes, backup tasks, and server events. Everything you need for proper monitoring and alerting. Talking about monitoring, you'd probably want to see some graphs with CPU and memory usage. By default, these aren't enabled, so go to the server settings and enable them in the general menu of the server. Then go to metrics and you'll start seeing some server metrics coming in. If we head over to the projects page, there's also metrics now showing up there as well. If you need terminal access to anything, my preference is using the terminal on the general side menu, where you can literally pick from a drop-down menu an endpoint to get a shell on, including the server itself. Just hit it and the shell opens up. And while we're here, let's look under the system's hood by looking at the running containers. There's a mix of server utilities and my application, so there's Postgres and Coolify objects, a traffic proxy, and others. Coolify lets you manage a platform, so you can create a team of members to provide tier-based access to others as well, with invitations and everything sorted for you. Remember the reports from earlier? To set up notifications, use the notifications menu and set up an email account or Discord or Telegram or Slack or wherever you'd like to receive them. To be honest, this is something I actually don't have right now with my paid service. Coolify really is a self-hosting with superpowers. So you have everything you need to create your own Vercel at home or in the cloud. But sometimes you need to scale further to multiple servers with lots of applications and have the ability to programmatically add or remove them as you go. Well, there's one open source built by DHH, the creator of Ruby and Rails, Hey.com, and 37 Signals. Check out the next video covering Kamal, the deploy to production platform that everyone should know. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.